Very special thanks to Cars of Somerset for providing the Mercedes in this review, as of course they did before, in the case of the facelifted version of this car which I reviewed, and as I always like to do, I've dropped a link to their website down in the video description, and of course if a car that you like in a review has already sold, you can even ask them to source you a car across the country as well, so click that link to check all of that out. Those of you who have already watched my review for the facelifted C63 AMG may remember, and if you haven't watched that one yet, you probably should, especially if you're on the market for buying one, and you can watch that video by clicking the annotation at the top of the screen. I mentioned in that video that there are some pretty notable differences between this car, which ran from 2008 to 2011, and that facelifted car, which of course ran from 2011 to then the end of run in 2015. Now, the differences are actually more notable than you might think, and my opinion when it comes to those differences might be controversial. Now, I'm not sure how controversial my thoughts are going to be, but let's get into the video and find out. Because, spoiler alert, I like this one more. In fact, I like it a lot more than the facelifted car. Now, both of these, despite of course having the huge difference that this one is the saloon or the sedan and that one was the wagon or the estate car, as we like to call it in the UK, it's more fundamental than that. Regardless of what kind of trunk it has on the back end, both of these are AMG performance packs, so they're both running more power, about 487 to the stock, quote-unquote stock, C63 AMG's 457. Now with 457, it can already do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds, so it's not exactly like it needs to be faster, but Car and Driver even recorded it at 3.9 seconds, so it's literally supercar territory in a saloon or estate car. But some of the more notable differences between these two cars, the facelift and the pre-facelift, are actually stuff like reliability, some of the issues that they can have, and one crucial mechanical difference, that being that this pre-facelift car does not have a limited slip diff, whereas the newer one does. Now, some people would automatically tell you that means you should get the newer one. But having spent time in both now, I can tell you, you cannot feel a difference. Unless you plan on taking this thing on a track day every weekend or pushing it well beyond legal limits every time you go out for a bottle of milk, you're not going to feel the difference between having or not having that diff. Because this one, in my opinion, feels better through corners. Now again, you take it on a track day, I'm sure you can spin up those wheels. It has 600 Newton meters of torque after all, which is 443 pound-feet, and of course, much like the facelift, has a naturally aspirated muscle car level engine, a 6.2 litre V8. So of course, power and performance are not left wanting by any stretch, but to me the differences that I actually prefer when it comes to this one are more in terms of how it feels, through corners, the ride quality in general, even the way the interior looks and feels. It's just almost this indescribable difference for me where this feels more authentic, almost. The facelift to me feels a little watered down in a strange sort of way. Yes, it ticks all of the boxes, but it doesn't look as aggressive. It's more understated. The interior is more executive than performance, and even the way it handles, it's a little bit harsh for my liking on the suspension. It wasn't that great through corners, and even under normal conditions, I actually felt it spin up one of its wheels just going around a normal roundabout. Now again, the weather conditions were different in that video to this one, but they weren't that different. They weren't wheel spin inducingly different. This one to me, it feels like it's not ashamed of what it is. There's nothing trying to cover up the fact that this is an absolute brute of a sedan, and that's what I want it to be. If you go into buying a modern or even 2000s era Mercedes AMG and you expect it to be understated, then you're simply buying the wrong car. I don't know what you're doing buying an AMG in the first place. When you buy something like this, you want it to be over the top. You want it to be muscular and brutish. This one strikes such a perfect balance between not being too uncomfortable or too raw or too brutal, but at the same time really letting you know that that is there all the time. The sound, the effortless performance from all of that torque, and even the handling. All of these components and parts of what make up this car's personality come together so well, and to me, they mesh better than they do in the facelifted car. Now, I'm sure I'm one of the few who thinks that way, because that tends to be where I fall on most arguments, but that's the way I feel, so that's the way I have to call it. Objectively speaking, well, you could make an argument for the newer car being technically better. It has fractionally better fuel economy, for instance, so of course the range is going to be a little bit better. Incidentally, this one's rated at like 13 to the gallon in the city, about 31 on the highway and 21 average. In reality, owners in general give it an average of about 18 to the gallon, maybe 19 at best, which in conjunction with the 14.5 gallon tank, or 66 litres, means you're going to get about 260 miles of range out of it. But again, it's a 6.2 litre Mercedes AMG, what do you expect? Overall then, I would say that if you are on the fence about buying this one or the newer one, maybe you like them both in terms of the look and the sound and the performance, and you just can't decide, and trust me, I know exactly what that feels like. I've had similar decisions myself within a brand. I would say that for a start, definitely drive them both if you can. A test drive could make all the difference for you. This one to me feels like a purer experience, and maybe that's why some people like the newer one. Maybe they like it to be a little bit more understated and more restrained, and to me that's the crucial difference. If I could take everything that I know about this car and everything that I could possibly say about this versus the facelift and condense it down into one core point, it would be this. If you want to be understated, if you want more of a sleeper car, then go for the facelift, 100%. If you want to fully embrace the look, the sound, the performance, and the personality above all else of a true modern AMG, then this is the car for you. In my opinion, there is no competition between the two for what I want. This one ticks every box. The newer one ticks some of the boxes. If I could own one of the two, it would definitely be this one, either as the wagon or as the sedan, and of course you've even got the coupe option as well, going all the way up to the crazy black series if you've got the cash. But in terms of that raw comparison, I was actually shocked by how different they were. Now, one of the crucial differences that some people may find in favour of the new car, again, to be fully objective and not just favour this one in every way, is that if I recall correctly, the newer car had a little bit more headroom. To the point where I probably honestly wouldn't buy one of these pre-facelift cars because I kind of ended up having a little bit of a bad back. Now, not everyone's going to be, 6'3", but if you are over 6 feet tall, you might find it a little cramped. And again, huge engine aside, it is still the smallest sedan you could buy from Mercedes at the time, so you wouldn't expect it to be as spacious as like an S-Class, but the seat in particular doesn't lower quite as much as I would have liked, and I don't recall that being an issue in the post-facelift car, so you might want to keep that in mind, but again, for most people it probably won't be too much of an issue. And in fact, in the case of that newer car, the interior design in general, as you can see from some of the POV and interior shots in that review versus this one, it does look a little bit more special. The interior in that car looks a little bit more upmarket. In this one, there are a few plastics here and there that might let you down in a top spec car. What was it, like 60 grand or something at the time that it was new? But all that aside, you don't tend to buy a car like this just to look at the interior. You tend to buy it because it is a modern day German muscle car, and that is the most important thing when it comes to this one, and it 100% delivers that. Now, apart from the differences in looks, interior space, fuel economy, having or not having a limited slip diff, there are some other crucial differences which you must note. And once again, this is me not showing overdue favour to this one, because I will freely admit this one does have more reliability issues. Now, some of the issues which this car has include faulty cams occasionally, engine bolts needing a recall from Mercedes, so if you are going to buy one, make sure that the car has had that, find proof of it, receipts, etc. Some oil level and oil leaks, and some overheating from the engine. Now, the overheating isn't necessarily an issue per se, it's just something which they're kind of known for, and in terms of oil, as with most high-performance cars, you want to make sure it's topped up and refreshed in general fairly regularly. it is, after all, a hell of a lot of engine to keep going, so as long as you keep the maintenance up, and I would say probably don't go for too high a mileage car, you should be okay. Now once again, it's an AMG, and even normal Mercedes models aren't cheap to find parts for, so again, going into the performance car experience, you need to be expecting things to be potentially expensive, but that's not really any more of a risk on this car as it would be for instance, a BMW M3 or a Lexus ISF or any of its other rivals. What then in terms of price, finally? Well, the range is fairly large on what you can pay for one of these. For the sedan in particular, so no wagon, no coupe, no black edition, you can pay anywhere between about £15,000 and about £40,000. So a pretty huge difference, and it really depends on what kind of mileage and condition you want it to be in. Now even on the lower end, the mileage isn't necessarily crazy high, it's just more of a risk, of course for obvious reasons, so you could potentially save a ton of money on the initial purchase price and then need to fix things fairly soon after, or maybe pay a little bit more, say maybe 20 grand for example, and have a nice tidy example such as this one. And in fact, that's exactly what price this car is. And again, that's the AMG Performance Pack, so it's even quicker, with 487 horses, even more torque, better performance. So 20 grand is, I would say, what you should be hoping or expecting to pay for a really nice example. You could take the risk of going for a lower priced model, which isn't necessarily something that I wouldn't do. You know, I may try that myself, but again, the risks are going to be higher. But if you were a previous owner of one of these, or maybe if you still own one, tell me your thoughts down below. And also, of course, for the benefit of other viewers who might be considering one, drop your thoughts, stories, maybe issues or faults, or just things to look out for with either this one or that facelifted car. And as I said, if you haven't watched the review of the facelift, be sure to check out that one as well, so you can compare the interior design, the space, the performance, and weigh up which one's the better option for you. But until next time, you can check out my other car reviews in Beards and Cars here on screen in their own playlist, and there will be a couple of videos that you can quickly link through here if you so choose. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.